Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com. Rodney, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
What's going on, Ryan? How are you?
I'm good. You're probably just waiting for Nick Saban coming up in about an hour, maybe 15 minutes or so. But leaving practice, anything that grabbed your attention today?
You know what? It was really basically the same as what we've seen the last several practices, Ryan. I mean, wasn't a ton different, to be honest with you. I mean, we only get 10 minutes. It's hard to tell, too much. I'll say this: Terrell Shavers, the redshirt freshman receiver, once again was not at practice. Josh Jacobs continues not to participate. He hasn't participated all spring. Those are a couple of things that I guess maybe are about the same. And then Christian Miller, who left the scrimmage Saturday with a minor injury, did practice today. He's practiced both days this week. So, that's good news. But other than that, Ryan, I mean, basically in the 10 minutes of viewing period, nothing much changed. The offensive line was still in the same order, I guess you could say, or the same lineup that it's been the last week or so. So nothing really changed there.
Rodney, let me go back to the scrimmage. I guess what was your biggest takeaway from some information that maybe you gathered behind the scenes of Alabama scrimmage?
Well, I think one thing is as you start to look at this defense, Ryan, a lot of new faces on the coaching staff. I think they're still developing that on-the-field chemistry. I think everything has been great so far. I just think that, anytime you have a new coach, a new defensive coordinator, like Tosh LaPoy never has called a defense before, there's certainly a lot of adjustments that have to be made. Some things that need to be, I guess, that, you certainly need to iron out. And you've got, other new coaches on that staff. LaPoy's the only guy that's returning on the defensive side of the ball as an assistant coach. I mean, you've got a new defensive line coach. You have a new inside linebackers coach. You have a new secondary coach. So, all of that is new, and I think they're certainly still working out the kinks in that regard. Of course, Nick Saban we know about him as his reputation as a defensive-minded coach, so certainly everything should be fine. But then you've also got a lot of replacements in the secondary. You lost 6 guys back there, so I still think they're working to kind of develop, those areas. Trevon Diggs did not participate at left corner in the scrimmage. So Savion Smith at right corner, I understand he continues to do extremely well. So you look at those 2 guys, and they certainly look like they're going to give you 2 very good, corner possibilities there. And then on the back end, Deontay Thompson continues to do really well at safety, and a couple of young guys, Xavier McKinney, Daniel Wright, back there at the other safety spot certainly are competing. Shy Carter and Jared Maiden have worked at the star position, have worked at safety. Those 2 guys certainly look like they've got opportunities to contribute this year as well. So I just think they're still trying to put all the pieces together, Ryan. But like I've said, spring practice is a lot about development. They're just trying to develop as many players as they can develop and get them to a level where they're ready to contribute and play winning football.
Rodney, have you been surprised that Savion Smith has walked in and played at this high level? I know that he had some bowl practice and grabbed a lot of attention then. I know you brought that to the show a couple of months ago during bowl practice, but are you maybe a little bit shocked that he has been able to make this transition a little easier than maybe some anticipated?
Well, here's the thing. I think Ryan is, first of all, he's an extremely highly recruited player out of IMG Academy down in Florida. He's a 5-star recruit, got to LSU. And, so he's had that experience. He knows what it's like on this level. They get pretty good coaching over there too. So he had that opportunity to go through that year there at LSU and, kind of got a feel for things. So he knows how to make that adjustment. Last year he was at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College where he had an outstanding season, and then got here, in December and went through those practices for the Clemson and Georgia games. So I think he's really comfortable. He's a tremendous athlete. He's got excellent size. He's about 6'1", 195 or so. So he's got really excellent size for, that position. And I just think that his experience previous to this, Ryan, certainly helps him make those adjustments that sometimes are more difficult for others.
We are talking right now to Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com, TiderInsider.com. Let me ask you just a prediction. If you're evaluating things that we've been able to watch, I guess 9 practices in, the scrimmages, we'll know more, I guess, coming out of A-Day. But if you're just taking a stab and understanding that this is April the 11th, this is not April the 21st, if you were predicting that offensive line, how would you line it up? Just from what you've been told and what you're hearing, what do you think the starting five might look like?
Oh, you're talking about for A-Day?
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. Just going into Louisville, coming up at 143 days. What do you think that offensive line will look like?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because, we know that Matt Womack's out, and, you certainly I don't know where – obviously, he's going to be back and healthy very soon, just won't participate this spring. But, I could see where they are right now with Jonah Williams at left tackle, Alex Leatherwood at right tackle, Pierce Baker at center, Lester Cotton at left guard, and then Jedrick Wills at right guard. I think that's a possible lineup right there that we could see, for the first game. Now, again, you have to also understand that Womack was, I think they really appreciate the job that he did last year. He was very, very steady. He's injured his foot, and obviously it's hurting him right now. But, Leatherwood did a fantastic job in that championship game at left tackle. And he's got so much ability. Jedrick Wills has so much ability. Those two young guys, Ryan, are going to be very difficult to keep off the field because they're so talented. They're so good. And we'll see what happens. But, the five as they have it right now, that could be what we see in that opening game.
Alex Leatherwood in that competition with Jonah Williams, obviously they're trying to look at a lot of different options there. But big Alex Leatherwood, every time I go back, and I watched that national championship game, and I know you and I were talking about a couple of days ago of looking back at that second half. It's overlooked because it's an offensive lineman. But Alex Leatherwood, what of a performance in that second half.
It really was. I mean, we talk about Tua and what a great performance that was. And, just overall, when you think about how many freshmen, what was it, 6 freshmen in the game? That is the most unbelievable thing I think I can recall in a championship game, in an Alabama game, to have 6 true freshmen on the field in the second half, game on the line, trailing 13-0. Because if you remember, Leatherwood came in with 13:41 left in the second half. So, I mean, Alabama just had one possession, and he was in the game when Jonah went down with that injury. So having all those guys on the field and the level at which they performed was just absolutely incredible. And Leatherwood, I mean, for a guy that had no more experience than what he had at left tackle, you're thinking, this has got the chance to be a disaster because of the inexperience. But, I mean, he came in and was just off the charts in that game.
Rodney, we featured Levi Wallace earlier. What an inspiration, for one, about his father and living that dream. But number 2 is the story of him walking on. He told us he had absolutely no even consideration from colleges out there. How did you look at the recruiting world, and I'm not throwing stones by no means, but how did this hidden gem fall through the cracks, man?
Happens, it happens. He was a guy that he's a little undersized in terms of his frame,
sure,
and still was here at Alabama to some extent. But he had skill. I mean, that guy. If you remember, Ryan, we talk about how he came in the Florida State game and pretty much shut down that left side of the field for the rest of the season. But he did a great job the year before when he came in the Auburn game for Marlon Humphrey. And, played in that game, started the SEC championship game against Florida, if you remember, did a fantastic job in that game. He's a great story all around. You talk about with his father growing up here in Tuscaloosa, and, they eventually ended up out in Arizona, and always been a long-time Alabama fan, and his dream was for his son to play here, and, came back and not only walked on and, got on the squad, but, started. And now we're talking about he's going to be a draft pick. It's an incredible story. And, Ryan, when you look at him, there's not too many guys. We talk about those young freshmen that came in and played in their roles that they did and succeeded. I mean, how many times, it's just not very often you see a walk-on cornerback that come in and really contribute at the level that Levi Wallace did.
Rodney, you're a guy that holds faith as a very important to you, and obviously I know this is a football show, and we try to intertwine some of that. But we've been talking today, and I don't want to shift away, but the inspiration that Alabama's players, including J.K. Scott, let me give a quick plug. He will be live with Gary Harris tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. J.K. Scott will lead out the show. But J.K. Scott, Raekwon Davis, Anthony Jennings, Bradley Bozeman, I think Jalen Hurts was all circled around the president. What an image that was yesterday that we all kind of reflected on that and kind of reminded us of the way that we should be praying for our leaders daily.
No question. No question. You know, you see a lot of things on Facebook and disrespectful, no matter who the president's been. You know, you see a lot of disrespectful comments and all of this. And then when you see something like these young guys, what leadership we saw out there in that picture, in that video, you know, it's on Facebook. I know I shared a story on it there on my Facebook page, but, you know, what leadership you saw from all of those guys who gathered around, you know, President Trump and, you know, prayed for him. I just think that, you know, people that are maybe adults that get on Facebook and they make disparaging remarks, and I'm not just saying now, I'm saying in the past, make these political comments and what have you, against our president, whoever that might be. I think you should really look at that picture and kind of reconsider. You know, there are differences and maybe you don't agree, but I do think that those young men took a real strong, you know, leadership, especially J.K. Scott there praying for the president and asking him if he could do so. I mean, that's just one of the most amazing things I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that, you know, they always say a picture can say 1,000 words. And you see that picture, and it's like, I mean, I tell you what, man, it stepped on my toes, and it kind of reminded me of, you know, I need to be thinking more about those guys up in Washington and praying for guidance and leadership. It was inspiring to see, and I thought the speech and the celebration was pretty unique. 93 days ago today, Alabama laid it on those Georgia Bulldogs.
Boy, it's flown by, hasn't it?
Can you believe it? 93 days away. I mean, it just seems like
man.
And those Georgia fans, my understanding is still taking it pretty hard over there right now. So I think,
well, they should be. They should be, Ryan. But I tell you what, that may be the most memorable. I think that second half and the way it ended there was probably the most memorable moment that I have, you know, of Alabama football. And there's been a lot of, you know, those are some great moments. I mean, I remember sitting there as an 18-year-old kid watching the goal line stand in the 79 Sugar Bowl. And, you know, certainly that was extremely memorable. And there have been a lot of other moments, but I don't know that there's one that quite tops what we saw that night.
Well, I think even the president pointed that out. And I think we're so close removed, only 93 days away. We look back. I think that will be one of those that we'll look back 20, 25, 30 years from now, and we'll look back and they did what? I mean, because Levi Wallace shared the story. Rodney, he said there was no absolute panic in the locker room. None. No finger pointing, no blaming. He said literally they believed that they were going to win that game, and they never doubted it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you know, again, when that's part of it. I mean, they've been through a lot of trials, Brian. They've played in some big games, and they keep their composure, and that's one thing Nick Saban always talks about. You know, he preaches it to them from the moment he starts recruiting these guys. He plants seeds in them, and, you know, once they get here, I mean, it's constant. I mean, they're well trained in mental toughness and how to handle those situations, and I think that's why they were confident when they were in that position and remained calm.
Nick Saban's going to be talking coming up in probably about an hour and 10 minutes or so. I know we're going to carry that live, but you guys are going to have tons of coverage. TighterInsider.com, TighterInsider.com. Rodney, we're leading into this big scrimmage. We talk about another one here on the campus of the University of Alabama. A lot of things will be sort of known. This one's a little bit more private, not as open as the previous one, and certainly will not be open as compared to A-Day, but big scrimmage, another one on Saturday inside Bryant-Denny Stadium.
Yep, I think, you know, again, this spring's all about development, Ryan, and that's the next step. And, you know, before you know it, we'll be here with A-Day, and it'll be done, and we'll be into the June off-season summer program and, you know, marching forward to the season. But, you know, we keep up with every bit of that. on TiderInsider.com. We'll have, a little practice update coming up here. Again, it was only 10 minutes that we got to see, but practice update, some photos, and, Coach Saban talking. We'll have video of his press conference as well as, some notes from the press conference.
And you could simply go to TiderInsider.com, and the great forums there, hanging out with the great fans, your source for Crimson Tide news and views. It is Rodney Orr's TiderInsider.com and TITV with Gary Harris each Tuesday, 6:30, 10:30. You can actually go and look at the website. They've got the replay right there from TiderInsider.com. Rodney, as always, thank you again for your time, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. Take care.